Welcome to FO Talks. With me again is Martin Plout. He's a senior research fellow at the Institute of Commonwealth Studies and holds the same post with the King's College London. He has extensively written for Fair Observer covering Africa, and today we will talk to him about Ethiopia. Martin, welcome and thank you for speaking to us.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Okay, so Ethiopia is going to elections on June 1st. Can you tell us who are the top contenders and whether these elections are significant or not?
Well, I mean, the Prosperity Party of Prime Minister Abiy is one of the major contenders. In fact, it's really the only contender. I mean, there are several blocs, mostly drawn from ethnic groups, the Oromo Liberation Front, the Oromo Federalist Congress, the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Party, Medrek, and a whole series of other parties who are all standing. But, you know, quite frankly, I don't think they or anybody else expects them to get anything more than a handful of votes, and I would expect that there will be a landslide for Prime Minister Abiy's party and the ruling Prosperity Party. So, you know, I think it'll be a runaway success for Prime Minister Abiy. Frankly, right. He wouldn't hold it if it wasn't going to be one.
Yes, but what we're seeing is that the opposition parties have consolidated. We've got four of them now saying that it's a matter of life and death. They've also said that this election lacks basic credibility. Now you've covered Ethiopia for decades. You've written extensively about Ethiopia for Fair Observer. So can we even consider the upcoming vote a legitimate democratic process?
Well, not really. If we know the result before it begins, then I don't think it's terribly. It's not a very credible event. I mean, there are 547 seats, and there's something like 10,900 candidates, including 2,198 for parliamentary seats and the rest for regional councils. And people will certainly go out and vote. There's been a huge mobilization. There's been registration of people. It's been very successful. But then you have to look more carefully at what is going on. And part of that is that, you know, the regional authorities and the local authorities tell you, well, you know, if you want to get fertilizer this year, better register to vote, because otherwise you might just not be on the list to get that fertilizer. And some of the strong arm tactics are even stronger than that. So, you know, yes, across the country, people will go to vote, but they are constrained by two specific issues. One is the question of where the vote will take place and where it won't take place. And the second thing is the question of violence. And those are the two big problems that face everyone.
Right, that's very interesting. But before we get into where the vote won't take place and the amount of violence, why can't we just assume that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is a popular figure and maybe his government has done a good job and people want them back in power? Is that a possibility?
Well, if you go to Addis Ababa, it looks, particularly in the center, you know, clean, gleaming, lots of brand new buildings. There's been all the slums are being cleared away, or a lot of the slums in the center of the capital are being cleared away. I mean, I haven't been to Addis for a long time, but I'm sure I wouldn't even recognize it anymore as the city that I once knew. And, you know, a lot of people are, you know, have been pushed out of their homes or pushed out of their areas, and people are pretty annoyed about it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't large numbers of people who are around the Prime Minister who have done pretty well out of him and, you know, and the policies that he has pursued. And they will be keen to support him. I mean, I'm not suggesting he doesn't have any support, but, you know, I don't think we should take this election seriously. You know, there are some really serious elections in Africa. I mean, the elections in South Africa, for example, you can be sure that the vote counting, although there have been some minor glitches, are true to the last, you know, 2 or 3 decimal places. But, you know, and people genuinely vote how they think they can. But there are many, many other countries, you know, where it doesn't take place. Some place like Ghana, there are good elections and, you know, presidential power is fought down to the last, hour, and presidential authority shifts between one and the other. But then you get places like Rwanda, well, I mean, or Uganda, or even Tanzania, where there's no hope of any kind of democracy taking place. So, and frankly, if you get over 80 or 90%, please don't talk to me about democracy and elections. These are simply ways of legitimizing your hold on power.
Well, Martin, you're right about one thing, is that how the face of Addis Ababa has changed. And in fact, it became a talking point here in India because there were visuals of downtown Addis Ababa, and it showed spick and span streets. It was clean. It looked very modern. And people in India were questioning that we don't have downtown Mumbai this clean. How come Ethiopia has cracked the code? But keeping that aside, you've also written extensively about the conflicts that plague Ethiopia, and you've written about Tigray, where it's been a tense limbo, while security in Amhara and Oromia have effectively collapsed. Now, Fair Observer has a global audience with people watching you from everywhere across the world. Can you just give us an idea of what these ongoing conflicts are in Ethiopia? And if we've got these conflicts in these three regions, how can an election even be allowed?
Well, you can call an election. It just depends where it actually takes place. And, there will be security forces, and the Ethiopian military will be mobilized to guard the polling stations. But, in Tigray, there is unlikely there'll be any voting. That's the northern province. There was a terrible war between 2020 and 2022, which the Ethiopians and the Eritreans attacked Tigray, and there were at least 600,000 people were killed, the most appalling atrocities. And that has resulted, there is now peace-ish there, but it's a stalemate. And it's highly unlikely that there'll be any kind of voting will go ahead. In the Amhara region, which was, Prime Minister Abiy is half Amhara and half Oromo. And in neither region does he really hold much sway. In the Amhara region, the Fano militia now controls large sections of the countryside and clashes with the military repeatedly, weekly. They just claimed a major victory in killing a senior army officer and a number of his troops. And in Oromia, where about a third of the population live. This is a huge area, very diverse, very complicated politics. Again, there are large sections of the countryside where the army and the government can't go. So there the voting won't take place. So they'll collect the votes where they can, and then they'll have an announcement, and a penny to a pound. Prime Minister Abiy is going to be back in office with a new, squeaky clean mandate.
Right, and it's interesting that you've told us about this internal conflict, but I want our viewers and listeners to know that Ethiopia and Eritrea also had a prolonged conflict going on almost 20 years, and that was settled, and Prime Minister Abiy won a Nobel Prize for it in 2019. But almost 7 years down the line, things are kind of changing, because you've also highlighted how Prime Minister Abiy is escalating rhetoric regarding Red Sea port access and increased military buildups along the border with Eritrea. Now, is this sort of a narrative that he's building for this election, or is there actually tensions re-emerging, which could play a crucial role in the elections on the 1st of June?
Well, I don't think that people will vote on these kind of issues. People tend to vote on, bread and butter issues as they do everywhere in the world.
Right.
Is my home secure? Can I go out and buy food for my family? Can I get clothes for my children? Those are the sort of things that really worry people. Or, if I don't vote for the government, will I not get what I need to keep going? So, those are the key things. Prime Minister Abiy has made getting access to the sea, which would mean taking a port from Eritrea, because Eritrea has the ports that once belonged to Ethiopia, and they control them. And I cannot see Eritrea giving those up easily. I mean, they fought for 30 years between 1961 and 1991 for their independence, and they're not going to give up those ports without a fight. Now, who would provide Prime Minister Abiy and Ethiopia with the weapons? Who would provide him with the finances? He's close to the United Arab Emirates, but that would really get the Saudis very angry if he launched that kind of attack. And the Saudis and the Egyptians are now quite close to Eritrea in some aspects. I mean, there are conflicts between Eritrea and Egypt, but I mean, on the whole, Egypt, the Sudanese armed forces, and Eritrea line up on one side, backed a bit by the Saudis, and on the other side, you have the Hemeti and the Janjaweed, who are on the other side of the Sudanese civil war, and they are being supported by the United Arab Emirates. So there are these two big camps, which are now the big issue in the Horn of Africa. And if there's going to be a fight, and there already are, there was a suggestion today that a drone fired from Ethiopia was shot down by the Sudanese armed forces over Sudan today. So this is already a very, very tense situation. And there are training bases for the RSF, which is the Hemeti group, inside Ethiopia that are supplied by the UAE. Now, this is very dangerous stuff. Everybody knows what's going on. We've seen pictures and images of these bases. It's terrible. That is really dangerous. And, those are the things which are sort of looming over this election. I mean, it's not the issues around which the election will be decided, because I think they'll be decided by who counts the votes. Stalin's old joke, it's not he who votes that makes the difference, it's he who counts the votes that makes the difference. And I'm afraid that is true in Ethiopia, and that's where we are at the moment.
Right. Martin, you've beautifully explained the alliances that are formed in this region. In fact, I spoke to Fernando Carvajal. He's an expert on Yemen and Sudan. And he was also explaining how the UAE is aligned with the RSF and, of course, with Ethiopia. And then you've got the Saudis who've aligned with the Sudanese army and Egypt. Now, it's interesting that you've broadened up this discussion to bring in what's happening in Sudan and the alliances that are shaping the region because of Saudi-UAE rivalry. Now, Ethiopia also has disputes with Egypt and Sudan, and this is mostly over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam that is on the Nile River. How much of that is a factor in the upcoming elections? Is it even a factor? And second of all, do you think this is going to lead to some sort of a water war sometime in the near future?
Well, let's deal with them one at a time.
Right.
Is the dam an issue in the election? I don't think so. I mean, Ethiopians are incredibly proud of their dam. It's across the Blue Nile. It's a hydroelectric dam, which is quite close to the border with Sudan. I mean, it's a matter of a few kilometers from the dam, from the border. But it is only a hydroelectric dam. They are not using it for to irrigate the country or grow crops. So when they put it through their turbines, then it just flows down the river. And the only thing you could say about it is, in a dry season, they might hold it back more than the Egyptians or the Sudanese would like. But it's always going to go down, eventually arriving at Alexandria and the sea. So that's just given. I mean, the Ethiopians are so proud of it because the Egyptians tried for decades to stop this dam. And it was the previous Ethiopian government that finally said, enough. We know you can block us in the World Bank. They won't give us loans for this because the Egyptians put pressure on the Americans. The Americans block World Bank finance. We'll pay for it ourselves. And with a bit of help from China, They paid for it themselves, and they levied people to put their own money into the dam, and Ethiopians are very proud of it. It provides the possibility of sales of electricity to Sudan if Sudan ever gets its act together, and could lead to industrialization in Ethiopia, all of which is very positive. And there isn't a debate about that dam in Ethiopia, because it's seen as something for which everybody can be proud, since everybody has put their money in.
Right. And looking ahead into this election, I'm sure you've been reading up on what mainstream media has been covering. Of course, a lot of them have been questioning the legitimacy itself of the elections, but you've worked in the BBC before. You also have written extensively for other publications, including Fair Observer. What is a storyline about the upcoming elections that the mainstream media is completely blind to right now? What is something that nobody is covering that they should be covering?
It's a very good question. I mean, what should be happening, and what would really tell you something about it, would be to move your reporters outside of Addis, even into the areas of Ethiopia which are relatively open and safe, and go and report from rural areas. See what the ordinary people in the rural areas are facing. How are they voting? What are they thinking? That is what I'd really like to see, because everybody will be sitting in Addis, with the same, experts that everybody can refer to, and they'll all be pontificating just like I am now, and they'll be saying what they want to. But the rural areas are always the most interesting place. And don't forget that Ethiopia, despite having had a considerable influx into the cities, is predominantly a rural nation. And what happens in the rural areas is absolutely vital. I mean, in a sense, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always thought that Indian elections were won and lost in the rural areas rather.
Absolutely, yes. So that's what you think, that there's a story to be told from rural Ethiopia that's not being told yet.
Yeah, and one of the real problems is that the media have been so hamstrung. They're not quite as hamstrung as they are in Eritrea. There are still some independent voices and some independent publications, but particularly as we get closer to election time, visas are denied. The Economist doesn't, for example, have a reporter there anymore. And it just becomes harder and harder for local people to report. I mean, during the recent war in Tigray, there were no reports, independent reports from the front line. None. Zero. And this was a war that went on for 2 years, and it was the bloodiest conflict in the world at that time. And yet there were no independent reports, except for one or two very brave people who smuggled themselves across the lines and managed to get a tiny toehold in Tigray. Well, I mean, that's no way to report anything. So, it will be difficult. And, if you say the wrong things in Ethiopia, they just never give you a visa again.
Brilliant. Martin, it was a pleasure having you, and thank you for speaking to Fair Observer.
It's a pleasure.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.